Okay, so it's being recorded. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This call is a joint effort between EDUCAUSE ITSM constituent group and the Google group for higher ed ITSM folks who are using or are considering using ServiceNow. So we're all on this journey together. Nothing presented here is perfect or the be-all and end-all. We are here to share and discuss and help each other along our path. Please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. When you come into the session, your microphone is muted. And so if you want to speak, you'll have to unmute. And please hold all your questions until the end. Feel free to add them to the chat log during the presentation. And if it's pertinent to the thing that's on the screen, we'll either I or another host will interrupt the presenter. But remember to chat with everybody, not just the organizer, and that way we can share all the information. And so today, somebody came in unmuted. Okay, sounds like we got that. Okay, so today we have two speakers, formerly and currently from the Ohio State University. Bob Gribben, who served as Director for Service Operations for 8.5 years at OSU, is now the Senior Manager for Infrastructure Engineering at Magellan Health. Joining him is Marty Winders, who is the Associate Director for Client Services and Engineering at the university, and he was previously the Request Fulfillment Manager at Ohio State University. So they're going to share their journey from handle a big stack of email with random requests to implementation of a request fulfillment process that aligns with their service catalog. They will share this journey and a demo of their implementation with us for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have another 30 minutes for Q&A and general discussion. And it'll be also be an opportunity for everyone to share the related work that they might want to share based upon what they're doing. So with that, I'll turn this over to Bob and Marty. And Bob, are you ready?
I am. Hello, everybody. So again, my name is Bob Gribben, and it's very nice seeing everybody again and talking with one another. And basically what I want to do is, again, go through request fulfillment, the process that Marty and I took for OSU. So I'll So one of the things that I want to talk about is before everything started, before we went down this journey for request fulfillment, the service desk was taking approximately about 13,000 contacts a month via self-service, email, phone. And all of these contacts that came in, all of this, whether they came in self-service, email, or phone, they were all put inside the incident management aspect of ServiceNow. And then we also had walk-up areas, and walk-up areas might put in records against incident management for these requests, maybe not. But one of the big things that we were started with was, the site license software, and our walk-up areas with burning actual software requests on the disk and handing them out to people. So if somebody came in looking for Stata or, excuse me, whatever software that the university and schools were providing, they would run through us, and we would burn these and hand these out. And at the beginning of the semesters, you all know, or quarters, whichever one you have, you would know that there'd be a line of people, 20, 30 deep, waiting for a disk to take back and install on their machine, or they would just bring their machine to them. And one of the things we were recognizing is we weren't capturing all of that work that was being done on top of the work that needed to be taken into consideration that it took to burn these disks, to hand out these disks, and it was all put inside of the incident management aspect. So we were having these requests, as we know them, put in as incidents also. And so the issues there are bad metrics, time consuming. It was just a very cumbersome piece that we were doing. And you can see, I just kind of put this up there, that what was really happening is you can see the paper in and out and the computer, and people were looking for things. And it was just very chaotic is what it boiled down to. And so Marty and I, we had built out incident management. It was maturing, and now we had to ask ourselves these questions. And our customers were starting to feel this also. Where do I go to get my stuff, we'll call it? What's available to me? Who's responsible for it? Do I have to fill out a paper form? Can I do this online? How long does it take to get this information? Oh, can I track my status? if I put it into the system, because things are going in as an incident, which had completely different measurements, what's the process once I do submit it? When will I get it? And so these were a lot of questions we kept trying to answer. And so Marty and I, like I said, sat down one day and we said, all right, you know what, now's the time. Let's get away from everything going in as an incident. Let's start tracking requests, and let's start making sure that we take correct metrics against the differences for the service desk. So where we started is first understanding and making sure that there was an understanding across the organization, along with the service desk, which was handling most of this, of what request fulfillment is. And the easiest way for me to always explain to people what request fulfillment is it's the I want. The incident management side is the I can't. Request fulfillment is the I want. A customer doesn't have it, they want it. And so they would put in a request for this. So getting that understanding was a real big cultural change. And we had to really talk about the cultural aspect when we were building this out, because on top of that, what else was happening is we were starting down this process of defining our service catalog, which was very, very important, because I don't know where everybody else stands where they are, but for us, we had a lot of so-called services that really weren't services. They were actually components of services. So it was very important for us, in order to build out the service catalog, to actually go through and define our services. And so from that being, Marty and I came up with, this is the out-of-the-box high-level process of request fulfillment. If you're familiar with ITIL, this is straight from them. You can see that there's inputs from different pieces: submit request, log it, categorize it or prioritize it, fulfill it, close it, and there's ownership. Very high level. Now, excuse me, some of the things I want to go back to and make sure that we consider is, do we get into making sure that this is an agent base where somebody does this, or do we automate this? Are all of our services orderable? Are we going to recognize all of the orderable services? How are we going to tool this, if at all tool this? How should it look and feel? Would we be able to offer any kind of self-service, which is a big, big, big thing at this time when we started doing this? And then also making sure that we recognize incidents versus requests. As I stated before, everything was going in as an incident record. So when you pulled up your metrics, you get, all of these records in their incidents. And remember, the incidents are the I can't. Something's broken, and so forth. So these were a lot of the questions that we had to sit down and we would whiteboard these questions and try and get good information regarding this. So then we came up with our internal procedures. So with every process, it's great that you have it. It shows you, oh, this step, this step, this step. It's very important also to come up with your standard operating procedures. And since our organization was going through the service design aspect of building out a catalog, this is where we got involved to start to build out our request catalog for the services that we were defining. So what that meant is when the service design team was defining the service catalog, when they would come to a service, and for the sake of this, we'll talk about site licensed software, we got involved so that we made sure that we got involved from an incident standpoint and made sure that we had the right amount of knowledge-based articles that represented the site licensed software. But on top of that, it gave us an opportunity to understand all of the pieces that were orderable from a service. And it's not, for the sake of this conversation, it was about site licensed software. But if you think about email that you provide to your university, you've got student accounts, you've got, whitelist and blacklist, and you've got, groupings, and you've got email, mailbox increases, decreases, shut off, turn on, all the good stuff. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. You want to look at that service as you're defining it and understand what can be orderable. From there, so now, step one would be to gather those requirements. So we would have a team, myself, Marty, and we even included some of our service desk employees, because a lot of them have tool sets that we would love to maximize and build up. So we would include one or two of them inside the meetings too, because they were skillable in, say, Visio, or they were great when it comes to building out a process type mentality. So we would gather the requirements. Once we gathered the requirements, we contacted the service owner for follow-up on this requirements document. So we would fill out this document, we would send it back to them. Does this work? Yeah, we're gathering this information. We build out the request design and flow, and that's what we would do. We would actually build out the flow on how this should be ordered, whatever the request was. Once we built that out, we sent it over to that service owner, and we said, all right, do you approve of this? And this was a big thing for us. And I know, some people want to get in that lean and agile mentality where, Bob, you're playing with the waterfall. This isn't about that. This is about making sure that the service owner is involved in this and making sure that they're signing off on this as we move forward. So once they approved, we then went to the tool admin with all of our documentation, the process, the RACI model, the activities, the inputs, the outputs, what's expected when it comes to ordering the service. And then once it gets built out from step 5, you can see step 6 is where we turn it now over to the service owner and say, you need to test this and make sure that this works correctly. And the ServiceNow team and the service desk, they would be doing their part and testing this also. But it was real important that the service owner, based upon the information they gave us as this request fulfillment team and also the ServiceNow build team, test this and approve it. Once they approved it, now we get into the planning, the communications of this item, making sure that the model is being communicated out, making sure that there's knowledge base articles that back up what this service is about, what's actually orderable versus not orderable, making sure that we recognize the service owner and get their contact information. We then would turn it over to training, especially to that fulfiller side of things, whether it be from the service desk start or even to the nth level escalation point for where the task goes to. But we would get into training on how to fulfill this. We would set a go live date, and then we would roll out this self-service piece. So we started, like I said, with site license software. It was the most valuable thing that we can start with. And the reason being is because, again, when you get into this mentality, there's a lot of things you can look at across your organization and say, oh, that would be easy to do, and that would be easy to do. I mean, I could tell you, when we did site license software, there was another request item that we built that I think the day we built it, it was never used. And that was for Muzak, if anybody remembers Muzak. And it was always a funny joke for everybody of why did we have to do this. But it did give us a learning opportunity. But it was the most valuable thing to start with because this allowed our students to go into a self-service aspect and be able to submit a request item that, again, measured completely different than an incident, and request the software that they desire. In a few moments, I'll have Marty take you in there and show you what it looks like. This also met the requirements for our faculty, staff, and students, so all the way across the board. It wasn't just designed just for our student population. And this allowed us also to work with our partners to engage them. And what I mean by that is as we were working with our site license software, we would find a piece of software, we could go and meet with that vendor and say, all right, based upon our contract, will you allow us a download link? Will you allow us to be able to push information to the user so that they can go directly to your site and download the software versus us downloading it and then burning it onto a disk? So it really helped us build up a better relationship with our vendors at this point in time as we were defining all the pieces of site license software. So what else did we do? So that was just one of the pieces. You know, we obviously started getting into the difference between service requests and incidents, which was a big piece. We needed to know what was going on with the two separate processes, how many. So now we were starting to get metrics, and we were starting to see that there was site license software incidents and now site license software requests. So we were able to measure that piece that I was just talking about. And then the one thing, next piece I want to talk about is back in the day, and for a lot of you that are on ServiceNow today, you've probably seen the new call option as a piece. Well, back in the day, before that came out, we actually created this piece called a contact, which is basically the same thing. But this allowed us as a service desk, me as a service desk analyst, to go in and say, basic information, this service is what it is. And as I talked with the customer, I could either choose a request, an incident, or service catalog at this point in time. And it would take me to where I need to go. And this helped us separate our records at this point in time based on the information that we gathered up front. So this is kind of what this create contact form looked like. If you're using ServiceNow today, the new call option is the same thing. And you could see up at the top, I mean, it's basic information, but we at least get to capture the service category, the service provider. We can also assign it to where it needs to, the state that it's in, short description, some work notes. Again, and I'm pretty confident everybody in here understands incident management request fulfillment. This is where we're talking to our customer and trying to understand. And then we could submit it, and this will just save it as a contact form, which is not always, something that we want to do, but maybe we're waiting on some information. But we can create an incident, we can create a request, or, like I said, go to the catalog. So after we started playing around with that, we got that going, along with the request item of or site license software, our create contact. We started to talk about this one-stop shop for customers, and this is, getting into if you use ServiceNow currently today, or if you're thinking about it, we've always had this mentality of, I love going to the grocery store and I need some milk, I need some cereal, I need some eggs, and I'm putting it into my shopping cart. So I have a cart with all these many different items. but it would be great to actually have the service catalog visible to our customers, which is your menu. So if you go into a restaurant, you look up, or you have it in front of you, that's going to be your service catalog. And we want it to be broken down by students, faculty, and staff. So if I were a student and I log in, I should only see certain things, where versus if I was a faculty member, I could see completely different ideas or pieces. We want to really get into breaking down the barrier of putting in technical jargon and putting in, layman's terms for our customers, which was very, very valuable so that they can understand what we're talking about here. And this allowed them to view, order, track, set up notifications, turn off notifications, but really give them the visibility into the request item or their site license software and what's going on with that.
Did you mute yourself by chance?
I didn't know I muted myself, but thanks for telling me, whoever said it. Thanks, Todd. What I want to do right now is I want to turn this over to Marty, who, at the time was, my partner in crime when we were building all this out. And he's actually going to walk us through the service catalog and the site license software look in our self-service page. So with that being said, I'll be glad to turn it over to you, Marty.
All right, so I'm gonna, somebody let me know when they see my screen. I'm now sharing, and you'll see this is the service catalog here, an example being the site license software. You see how to order, what kind of platforms there are, basic information of what the service is, optional features, pricing, etc. And once you get to that is where I'll show you two views. We have the internal view of our request catalog, which shows us all of the various requestable items that have been created over the past 3 to 4 years. And then from the outsider's perspective, a customer, what they would see. So this is our inside of our self-service and what that looks like. So once you click on it, we're going to do a site license software request. You have the opportunity to make a request on behalf of someone else. You can hit the next button. Maybe. Let's see. Site license software request. We'll hit next. Let's just open and close real quick. There we go. So then you see all of the titles that are available. Obviously, with my role, I see a lot of different things. Students would see what they're supposed to see. I'm actually a site license software coordinator as well, so we get to see all kinds of fun things that I can choose from. I'm going to choose SPSS because we're in our SPSS renewal time frame. So I click SPSS. It gives the different versions that are available to me. So Windows, Mac, and Linux. So if I choose the Linux or the Windows version, you also see what am I ordering this as? Is it staff employee or software coordinator? So that helps us determine, that we are doing the correct licensing models, and we can report back on that. So I'm going to choose it as a staff employee. It can ask the department you're in. We'll just pick software coordinator. I choose one. I hit next. And asks, is this university owned or personally owned? Again, for tracking mechanism of what is available. We hit next. It gives you your software license agreement. You hit I agree, and you hit next. And then we're going to check out. Like Bob mentioned, we've treated this like a store, so it's just like a checkout button. We'll get RITM, tasks, etc. In this case, and why Bob talks about this one quite a bit, is this one's fully automated from start to finish. So once I hit checkout, it will complete, and what's going to happen is it'll run through an entire process that was built by our ServiceNow team. And I will just show you guys the workflow real quick. And what it's going to do is all of these steps were built and tested and validated. So it goes in, it checks who it's for, it provides information. Did it need a payment? Did the payment get sent? What kind of software is it? To the point then that it's going to send me an email link with a link to an email where I can download the software, and start to finish, this was not touched by a service desk agent at all, and the customer will obtain their email or obtain it. So you'll see the notifications we're now going to get. That's the that I ordered SPSS statistics, and then we're going to get another one that is the actual download link, which is here. So you'll click here to download the software. It'll open a browser for me, and once I log into that, it will start the download process immediately onto my desktop, allowing me to install, allowing a student to install. So it'll say your download should begin, save file, and the download continues. So that is probably the most complex one that we built, and it goes from start to finish with no interaction from the service desk, and provided the software to the customer. So that's kind of how a start to finish one worked. We also have, as you can see from the service catalog, lots of different options inside of our request catalog that are available, from email to a variety of, we've been moving towards Skype for Business, so there's lots of things as far as that. File share, obviously a workstation request process. We serve about 10,000 customers from our campus to other campuses for desktop support as well, so we can complete workstation requests and loaner requests and a variety of other functions. But that's a quick demo of what's provided and what's available to them, and then start to finish of ordering site license software. So with that, we got about 35 minutes. So what kind of questions do people have?
That's great, Bob and Marty. Marty, I had a question for you, if you can continue to share your screen, because I think we're going to have questions on that. When you were showing us the ordering process, was that done through a order guide or just a regular service request form?
The one we showed was an order guide. We've done both, and sometimes it's just a regular one-page form. In that case, what you saw with site license software was done with an order guide.
Okay, great, thank you. And then from Henry, he asked, how did you come up with the category structure for your request forms?
Bob, do you want to touch on that one some?
So what was the question? How did we come up with our categories?
The category structure for your the request forms.
Oh, that's a great question. How did we come up with a category? So our categorization model, one, was built off, if we're talking about the categorization structure, whether it be internal or external. So for instance, if you're looking at what Marty has up here where it says account and identity management services or hosted services, is that what we're asking about?
Let's go with that, yeah.
So when we sat down and we started to the very first, I couldn't quite tell, are you hosting the software itself? Oh, okay, never mind. I'll come back to that question, Aaron. When we started this out, it was just a hodgepodge. Like I said, we just tried to get as much as we could in the definition for our categorization of what our services would be. And through time, what we started to recognize is there were these buckets of our services as we were starting to mature as an organization. And as you can see, like unified communications or even voice services, making sure that we recognize those, the telephony aspect versus that collaborative aspect of email, box, Office 365 type pieces, or excuse me, security. I mean, we all know where security comes into play, but client computing, what are the things that affect our users from a desktop support mentality? And so we had to start to think about that higher level hierarchy. So when you get into that categorization model, the way we set it up was a line of business because of this becoming a shared service model. And then from there, we had a category, which was this, let's call it a bucket, so voice service. And then we defined all the voice services service to be part of the subcategory. So for instance, cellular or, excuse me, I didn't want to cough in anybody's ear. A university phone, and those were services that we defined from there based upon, like I said, that higher level. So we just sat down. Really, it was through maturation and understanding of what people were actually doing in different parts of our organization.
So it sounds like, or it looks like you did this based upon what the customer would expect when logging in. It's not based upon your internal organizational structure.
That's definitely not about our internal our organization structure. This is 100% about if I were a customer and I were going to the restaurant and I open up a menu, I should see sandwiches in one area, I should see pasta in another, I should see, you know, the higher end meals with the steak and lobster tails or whatever the case may be, but I should see them grouped differently. Oh, here's my side items, these are my drinks. And that's what we came into getting into this. So you can see there's onboarding services versus video services.
That's great. That's a really good analogy. And so, Henry, if that didn't answer your question, you can ask another one. So Anne asked, how difficult was it to identify service owners and get them to accept their responsibilities as service owners?
Marty, I'll take this one. First of all, it wasn't that bad, and I'll tell you why. We had a CIO at the time when we first started down this journey who really, and I'm a very firm believer, things burn from the top down. Things don't burn at the bottom. The service desk doesn't start things, and everybody's like, yeah, let's do what the service desk says. Our CIO bought into the ITIL. We were really heavily into it and understanding, not necessarily the cookie cutter mentality of it, but the framework. And she basically said, this is how it's going to work. And she went through the organization with her direct reports, and they started naming the service owners. Did the service owners change throughout time? Yes. And it was real big that when we started to name the service owners, that we had a definition behind what a service owner is and their responsibilities in the grand scheme of things. And she really, really held people accountable and responsible for the services they provided. For instance, there was always a monthly meeting at the end of the meeting where only service owners, defined service owners, as we just talked about, were invited to, and they had to stand up in front of everybody else and represent their services from an incident and a request metrics aspect. So, for example, if we had SLAs built onto, we have SLAs built onto our incidents. If we were failing those SLAs, the targets that were defined, you had to explain yourself as a service owner and why you were failing the customer. So it was really, it was really, really nice to have somebody at the top drink the Kool-Aid and also make us drink the Kool-Aid.
That is really great. So another question is, Doug couldn't quite tell, are you hosting the software itself on an internal server, or are you using something like the box?
We host on an internal server and then serve it out through our web service hosting team. So we're not using Box for this purpose now.
Okay. And then a follow-up on that is, did you tie the software license check to a ServiceNow software asset management, or
Yep.
did you consider utilizing SCCM JAM to automatically push the software to the university-owned machines rather than sending the link to the requester?
So 2 questions to that. One, whoever said it, I'd be happy to know if you're 100% centralized IT, because here at Ohio State we're not. So yes, while we service a large area of our IT shop or of our customer base, overall, we are not the service provider for all of the customer base. And from that aspect as well, you also have to remember the student population. Our students are eligible for software and things like that. So we would not be pushing those through an SCCM JAM for, I'm actually in a Bob T shop as well. So we do some of that. We do offer out software through those tools. But for this purpose and for the university as a whole, we were not able to do that. Now, what I can show you and what I have up on the screen right now is the software licenses. And you can see, for example, an owner. Actually, if I look at, I think software items, I can look into all of the packages and see some more of that information as well. And we have tracked, you put me on the spot, but I might be able to see if one of these has some counts on it. So this is what you're looking at here is when we build out a software request item, this is where it looks to those things. Let me see, software. And let's just look up SPSS. And So you'll see, now don't read any of that, guys, and collect that from me. But current licenses available is 9,491 of SPSS 25 for student Windows. Active, so that means it's in the catalog. It has an agreement, and also where the download URL is listed up here.
Nice. Okay, another question. I'm just going basically sequential, so things are jumping around, that's why.
Okay.
Back to, so Todd mentioned that many institutions are utilizing the EDUCAUSE eCar service catalog model as a template.
Mm-hmm.
So did you compare your catalog against that, or against the EDUCAUSE Higher Education IT Service Catalog?
I could say probably no, but that's a great piece of feedback, and a takeaway for us is to go back and look at those things and see how they align. So yeah, I'll be Googling after this.
And then another question from Todd. When you began the discussion, was there a lot of triage to move requests that were incorrectly created as incidents?
Oh, you're asking about something that is also a great piece that we learned to build after the fact, because we had that same exact issue. So I'm going to show you just a quick way that we have done that in the past. So I'm just going to make it endpoint management, assign it to myself, and I'm going to call this a test incident. So if I make this an incident here and say, oh, this is a request, not an incident, we've actually, and it has to be, so we made some rules with this, and we said it has to be assigned to the person, and then they can do this. And what you'll see is we've created a switch to request. So if I hit switch to request, it's going to flip this incident to a request. And maybe I haven't hit save. Let's make sure I've saved that. That's because I didn't list it as a service yet. So let's see. Endpoint management. Don't need that. So if I hit save, we created, the tool team for us created a switch to request. And so I'm going to switch this to a request. It says close switch to request. If you caught that, you'll see where it went from an incident to a request. And the other thing that, we didn't want people to play games with this and switch things back and forth. So the creation date still stayed the same as well. So it started at 1433. It did not update to when I created the request. So your SLAs aren't able to be manipulated, et cetera, in the way that this was created. So I can switch it from an incident to a request, or a request to an incident, without changing my metrics at all. The one thing you can't do, and where you'd have to start over, would be if somebody said, hey, I want software, and did not go through the software request process. You will see that it says incident. So this is the incident we started with. It's now closed, switch to request, and this one is now an open request.
And is that custom code that you built to do that?
Yes, that our ServiceNow tool team built. And they did that. We've had very talented team members that have built a lot of these things.
That's good.
So one thing I would say with any of this, making an investment into your tool, making an investment into the people that run it are very important as well. We have a staff of 3 developers that work solely on ServiceNow.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah. So let's see. Do you have SLAs per service, or just one for incidents and one for service requests?
Bob can speak to incident when he built that. For requests, we do it by service for the request. And then once you've built out item, like one of these items, we can actually track it down to the item level. So generic requests are per service, and then once you've built it to this level, we will track down the SLA to the level of the item actually built. Bob, if you'd like to speak about incident, please do.
Yeah, so the SLA targets were based upon the prioritization. So P1, P2, P3, P4, based upon that. And the difference between incident and request was incident was 24-hour clock versus request was business hour clock. Because obviously when you have an incident, it's the I'm having problems, I can't do something. And so our job was to take care of the customer and get them up and running as quick as possible. So for example, a P4 was a 5-day resolution, and that was 80% of the incidents that came in were measured. So we wanted to reach an 80% goal of our P4s across the entire incident management portion in our organization, all the services, to meet that goal of 5 business days for our P4s. So, and whereas, as Marty brought up, the request was based upon a business hour, so an 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. mentality, and the generic was 5-day, but as we went through the service definition, we would meet with the service owners, and part of those internal procedures, one of the questions we would ask is, how long would it take to fulfill this request once you got the task sent to you? And we built out those measurements within each of those tasks for those services.
Good. Next question is, how and where do you address new student requests or incidents that do not have a user record in ServiceNow?
I can speak to that. We've created, and it's hard to track then, that's a great point, but we get all of our students as soon as they become applicants into the system. But for people who are not affiliated with the university, we've created a record or a user called Anonymous, and they're tracked as anonymous, which makes it difficult to, report off of those types of things. But for the most part, our students are in fairly quickly. As soon as they have applied, they get into ServiceNow. So we don't have that problem as much, but there are still a significant of records that we log, anonymous.1.
Okay.
We're name.number shop here. I don't know how other folks do it, but we are name.number. I'm Winters.1, for example, as you can see in the screenshot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And next question from Lucas. How many, FTE develop, maintain, administer a ServiceNow instance for your institution?
I believe I answered that, but I'll go ahead and answer it again. We have 3 full-time developers that work on the ServiceNow instance, as well as 1 manager and another developer, but they spend most of their time on our billing system. Comet is our billing system, and some of that is integrated as well, but there are 3 full-time developers.
And then how about your, when you are developing, let's say, a new request and you're gathering information, who is the business analyst on that? Does that sit on the functional owner side, or do you have business analysts on your ServiceNow team as well?
We have a business analyst on the ServiceNow team, and he helps design out the documentation from this side. When I ran request fulfillment, I would be responsible for updating writing the RACI model. So that's where Bob mentioned we would use that at times to help an employee who's looking to grow in their career. So, because one of my hats was process owner, but then managing the service desk as well, we would find people who were interested in growing and help them they would help build the RACI model. So they sometimes served as a business analyst, responsible, but then I would be accountable for getting the RACI models created. So, and then from the ServiceNow side, they have a business analyst that helps them create the documentation for that side.
Okay. And do you have a person who does the QA for when you move the code from one instance or from, sub-prod to prod?
from subprod to prod is was on the process owner. We would test it with the and we test during updates as well. So process owners are responsible for checking in Q&A, and I think we have 4 or 5 different instances, and one of them we do all upgrade testing prior to upgrades being completed, and then checking afterwards. So I would be responsible for testing request items. Again, we had a great service desk team that we would lean on as well, and ask them to go through the items and review those and make sure they worked in the new versions of ServiceNow. Okay. But it was my responsibility to sign off for them.
And do you use any of the automated testing within ServiceNow?
I can't speak to that, but we have not in the past. They might be looking forward to that, but not that I'm aware of.
Here at the University of California, Berkeley, we just recently spun that up, like in April or, no, I guess it was May. And we're finding it actually quite useful.
Oh,
it's,
okay.
you know, it's a learning curve. You know, we have to figure out how ServiceNow does automated tests within ServiceNow, but we actually like it. It's quite good.
That'd be great.
Next question is, how do you approach email notifications for additional comments being added across the 3 tiers, the request, RITM, and task, and reduce confusion in communications for the technicians and the customers?
So that's a great question, and so what we've done, and I've heard this from others and would be happy to hear what others are doing, is everything my motto to it was task is see work, do work. The item has the information in it, but my task tells me what I'm supposed to do. So if a comment is made inside of the RITM, we're passing down a note into the current open tasks that says there's information added to the RITM. Please review the RITM for any changes that might happen for your work. We've seen that to be okay. You know, it's not a perfect world, but they, you know, for the most part, it's worked. I've heard some others copy down all of that information to each task. So there's opportunities either way. What we found is we leave the information in the RITM, and from the task level, we ask them to go look at the RITM to see if it affects them. If communication comes in from the request, we would have the request fulfillment process team review that. We actually just shut it off because we weren't finding value in that at the REQ level. We actually started to block the ability to do that because it wasn't providing good information to us. So we blocked it from the REQ level at this point.
And can you show us the RITM and the link that shows where the how they can see the notes? Or would you prefer not, since you're on? It looks like you're on production.
That's all right. I did test one. Let's see. Items and let's see. Let's just create one real quick. Do you want to see one that actually has workflow with it, or does it matter to you?
It doesn't matter, yeah.
Okay. So what we have is work notes and customer comments. Work notes, and I think this is pretty standard for everybody, is what the customer sees, or what the technician sees. Customer comments is what would be published inside of the customer comments, and they would be visible inside of self-service. So let's just put some information in there, and I should be able to go over to this and my tickets. This is our self-service. This is our open tickets. So in my view information, you can see where somebody can add a comment, and there's the comments that the technician made. In this case, it's me as the technician, so you can see the text comments for the customer, and you can add comments back. So, when will I get what I want? And that then will go back over into this side. I'll probably need to refresh it. But then that pops up as a customer comment.
Nice. And the other screen that you're on that has your service catalog, is that built in the service portal?
This was our self-service, and this was one of, I mean, Bob, do you want to speak to this? Because this is one of the last things you did while at Ohio State.
Yeah, so that is not, it's not built on Service Portal. It's actually a template that we went out and purchased. One of the things in this project that we ran into was it's not a negative, is we really wanted to create an environment that, just like when you log into your bank account, it's all devoted towards you, everything it is, your dashboard, your get help, your order services, your tickets, the technical aspects, whatever you wanted, we wanted to focus on that aspect of it when you logged in, because of it being such a vastly different between a faculty member, a staff member, and a student. So we went out and bought a template. I think it was like $14 for this template, and built it on top of that. So
that's nice. I like the view.
It really, I can honestly say it was a painstaking. The build wasn't painstaking. The process of everybody having their fingers in it and wanting this and wanting that, wanting this, wanting that, without actually seeing, was difficult. But the moment we rolled it out, people, oh, that's exactly what we wanted to see. So
that's good. So another question is, what version of ServiceNow are you running?
Marty, I don't know what version you guys are on.
Maybe
I can
Marty.
tell you, we always waited till the second release before we went to the current one. And obviously, for those of you that are on ServiceNow or going to be moving to ServiceNow, you do know that soon it's going to be that you can only be 2 behind. Yeah. Mandatory only 2 behind. It hasn't been released. That hasn't been released yet, but that information is coming. And so we were always 1 behind, but only the second release of the 1 behind.
Okay. Marty, are you muted?
I'm not certain.
Now we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm not for certain who might know this, but it says UI 15. So I don't know if that helps. But I'm not seeing it.
It looks like you're on UI 16, which is me. But if you go into your left nav.
Over where?
You just type in upgrade. Oh, no,
I might not have access.
Okay.
Yep.
Now
so I can get that information and share it out.
Okay. And then, so how is the customer notified about the change from an incident to a request?
I guess my answer back to that is I don't know that they care. They just want you to work on it. So that's why we made our self-service more along the lines of my tickets and my records. So ours previously said incidents, requests, my incidents, my requests, and the customer didn't really care. They want to know what's my record, what's my ticket. I hate the word ticket, but my record. And so we have RITMs and incidents in the same table. So the big thing for that customer is typically, I want to see what the short description I started with on. And so, once they get the next notification via email or whatever, when the technician is working the record, it would obviously look different. It would say incident instead of request or vice versa. But as far as switching, most of the time I don't believe the customer really cares. They just want you to get the work done. So we concentrated more on leaving the subject line the same and alleviating the confusion of going, oh, we switched this from a request to an incident. I don't think from a customer perspective that they care to know which one it is, as long as I want to know that you're working on it, and when am I going to get it?
I like that point of view. Yeah, I like it. So when they submitted the incident, they got an email. You then converted that incident to a request. If they reply to that incident email, does that update the request?
Yes.
Nice. You're just taking care of your customers left and right.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question is, how are you managing the license keys?
That's done by our contracts management team, and I guess the question, what I'm trying to understand, you saw the numbers in the countdown. So they have to be eligible, and if they're eligible, they can obtain a license key, and then that's marked and it's tracked as being assigned to that user. In addition, eligibility-wise, so that's where some of those roles happened as well. So a student is only allowed to download SPSS once. A software coordinator, which is like your local IT shop, they can download 30 copies of it and know that it's for that departmental use. But basically, in that screen I showed where it was software services, they can put the number of licenses available, and it'll count down from that and list each license that was ordered against it.
And so are you using the ServiceNow software models module?
When we built this, it was actually before that, so I don't think it's using it currently. We've talked about transitioning it over, and we are using that for some of our internal software ordering, as serving kind of two hats, one a local IT shop and one the overall IT provider. We are doing both things in a way.
Okay. And the next question, how are you what was your method or strategy for training new IT users, both technical and non-technical?
As far as with this catalog, or
I think whenever you roll out something new, how do you train the users, especially the fulfillers, not the customers?
Okay. So we get in a room and we tabletop. So we get everybody who has a role with the fulfillment of that particular service, because, what's the one thing everybody finds is, okay, well, I count on Billy and the server team to fulfill this part, and then I count on the networking team to fulfill this part. So we get representation from each of those areas, and when we say it's ready to test, we tabletop it and we go through it, and then we document it in our knowledge base from start to finish of how does this item work, what step. I don't worry about their internal processes to fulfill their task. What I tell them is, this is the task, and whatever you do to fulfill it, you fulfill it. We don't put in their work processes for that. They're expecting to know their work processes. We say, build a server or something like that.
Okay. And then do you let your service owners create or edit their own forms?
No, that's all done by the ServiceNow team.
Okay. Oh, I guess Bob answered that already in the chat. Let's see. So Doug had mentioned, going back to something that you mentioned earlier, Marty, Doug added, we have our fulfillers work with tasks, and then our customers interact with just the RITM.
Correct.
And then we provide them the request number, but we steer them to using and referencing the RITM. And that's what we do at UC Berkeley as well.
When I think of the REQ, I think of it, like when I go shopping at Amazon and I buy a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and a pair of shoes, the tasks are all below to fulfill each one of those items. But then my request isn't going to close until, and hopefully they're not going to bill me for everything until every one of those items are sent to me. But each one of those items have tasks to be able to get to me.
That's a good analogy. And then one more question, I think, from Jonathan. Within the organization, where do the ServiceNow developers sit? within the client services group or within the development group?
That's a great perspective. They actually are part of our ITSM team, and they sit. So those have been discussions everywhere, and I'm sure you guys have that same issue. But they've been separate from enterprise applications, continue to be separate from our enterprise applications, but they're part of an ITSM team that we have now. And so a lot of our ITSM processes are under one roof, and they're under there now.
Okay.
So it kind of aligns, and that's a good thing as well, because most of the things you want to do with ServiceNow are tied to ITSM. So bringing those two things together and creating or modifying your tool based off of process is always better than modifying your processes based off of what the tool can do.
Right.
So.
Right. And then Lisa asks, are you using more than the ITSM apps in ServiceNow?
We use the project app as well. We use CMDB, request, incident. We've gotten into some of the security. I'm trying to remember which one it is. Is there anything in particular she was asking about?
No, but Todd asked, are you using Change?
Yes, we are using Change. Thank you, Ed. Change was, and problem. Yep. Request, problem, change.
Major incident.
What's that?
How about major incident?
Major incident is built inside of our typical incident. And so, yes, we use it. I don't know if there's something different that you're referring to.
Yeah, they don't use the standalone major incident version.
Okay. Lisa added, I'm curious, how much of the platform outside of the ITSM suite? So are you using like facilities?
No.
GRC?
GRC we've started to get into, yes, but we're not using it a lot at this point.
And then you said you were just dipping your toe into the SecOps and vulnerability.
No, we're not really into those. I was thinking more of GRC that we're getting into. We're not doing SecOps or vulnerability. We've tied a little things into vulnerability, but security has concerns around putting vulnerability data, et cetera, into the cloud.
Yeah, our security team has the same concern.
Yep.
And how about HR? Do you use HR?
No.
Orchestration?
Now we'll see as we, what's that?
Orchestration?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're running right up against the end of the hour. I really appreciate folks sticking through the end, and I really appreciate and I want to thank Bob and Marty. It was a really good presentation. And we'll be posting the recording and any supporting docs to the group as soon as they are assembled. So thanks, Bob and Marty.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.